Hey guys, I'm Voylin, and in today's video I want to talk about how I passed the JLPT N3. So I passed the JLPT in December 2022, and how did I do it? Well, I have been studying Japanese since 2016, so I know what you might be thinking. After 6 years of studying Japanese, it only makes sense that you actually can pass the JLPT N3. But I actually did not study actively for the past 2 years before the tests. Even when I was still studying Japanese, I never really studied specifically for the JLPT tests. And if you have the plan of actually taking the JLPT test, like a high level of the JLPT test, that's not really a good idea. You should probably study more focused towards the test itself, towards passing the test. It was only until my last month before the test actually happened that I started putting an effort into studying Japanese again, because like I said, I had not studied for 2 years, and I've never, even before that, I never studied specifically for the JLPT. That last month before the test was quite difficult, and I studied quite a lot every single day for as much as my brain would let me. I probably should have taken more time instead of only 1 month to specifically study for the JLPT, but yeah. At the time I was also still working, so I also did not really have much time to study in a day. It was after work or during my lunch break that was the only moment that I had time. And when I'm at home, I have my kids here, which does not really let me study, and yeah. And at my work, doing lunch breaks was also quite difficult, because most of the time I did not really have my full lunch break, only like 10 minutes, because my work was too busy. And what were my tools? What tools did I use to study for the JLPT N3 test? My tools were basically the Nihongo so Matome books. I've been talking about them quite a lot. I went through all the JLPT N3 books of the Nihongo so Matome series, and then I also went to the JLPT N3 question book, which was probably the most useful one. And honestly, without those books, it would probably not have been possible for me to even pass the JLPT N3. I'll put a link to those books in the description for the people who want to check them out. Beside those books, I was also using Anki, entering all the words and phrases from those books, which I had trouble with remembering and such. Basically, all the things that I was struggling with, I put them into my Anki, and I kept reviewing my Anki every single day. Because those things were in my Anki, I did not need to carry my books around, and that way, studying at work or studying on the transportation to my workplaces, it was more easy to actively get some studying time done during random moments of the day. So I was doing Anki during the day, and during my mornings mainly I was doing the books. Evenings were basically my kind of like downtime, as I'm not really an evening person and my mind just does not work past 7 o'clock. I was never able to study from my books in the evening. I also used the N3 vocab course on Memrise, and I was also using Pimsleur Japanese to practice the whole listening. I still think Pimsleur Japanese is quite a good resource to study Japanese with, especially for the listening and speaking part, but they're a little bit expensive. Luckily they made an app, and it is actually a lot more affordable to use the Pimsleur lessons with that application. Just remember to cancel your subscription on time, and yeah, it's a subscription thing. Because I still had those Pimsleur lessons on my PC, my cost for studying for the JLPT N3 was basically 0. One very helpful thing for that was the library. The Nihongo so Matome books which I used actually came from the local library. I still had some books that I bought with my own money before. I don't really calculate that towards the price, because when I bought them, that was probably like 2 years ago. Yeah. I was planning on studying a lot more Japanese, but then life happens. Or more specifically, my work happens. But basically, most of the books that I was using to prepare for the JLPT N3 tests came from the library, which has saved me a lot of money. Another quick piece of advice. Try to go, like if you live in Japan at least, try to go to your city hall. Look for free Japanese lessons. Most of the time in those buildings you will also have books specifically to learn Japanese, which you can rent out for free. The only thing when you're renting out books is that you can only use them for a certain amount of time. For the N2 I bought the Nihongo so Matome books myself, so I can go through them at my own pace, because the Nihongo so Matome books are supposed to be taken like 1 day, like each page is like 1 day over the course of 3 or 4 weeks. For the JLPT N2, I will really need my time. And then we come to the part of the practice test. So I used the official JLPT N3 practice book and the Nihongo so Matome 500 questions book for JLPT N3. These were very helpful, and I tried to do some extra tests which I found online, but yeah, I kind of forgot which site I was using, so I won't be able to put those in the description. And honestly, on those practice tests, I did quite well, and as expected, my reading and grammar were my main struggles. But what kind of surprised me was that I kept getting over 90% on the listening part, which I honestly did not expect at all. I thought my listening will be one of the worst parts, but yeah, I actually did quite well on that. I don't know why I did so well. So I was starting to look forward to the listening part for the JLPT N3 test, and I thought it would be a piece of cake. So with all these practice tests, I started to think like, I should have gone for the JLPT N2, because I'm scoring quite well on these JLPT N3 practice tests. But then the test day came. On the test day, I was able to keep myself reasonably stress-free, which was kind of a challenge at the time to stay stress-free. I actually really like tests, and I rarely feel nervous for tests, so yeah, I was kind of looking forward to them. And because of practice tests, I actually felt quite confident in myself. But that was until I opened the test and saw the questions. I don't know why, but I feel like the difficulty of the test went up by 200% compared to all the practice tests which I have been taking. Like even compared to the official practice tests. Like the level of that test was so much higher, and I don't know why. I was kind of starting to panic a little bit, but during the listening test it became quite noticeable that I wasn't the only one struggling. Like after every listening question, which I found easy, you heard all the pencils being taken up and writing down their answer. The whole room knew the answer. And then the questions came that I did not really knew, that I found quite hard. And then the whole room just stayed silent. Nobody was picking up their pencils to quickly write down the answer. Everybody was struggling with the questions that I also found difficult. So I started to feel kind of like, okay, I'm not the only one who thinks this test is difficult right now. It was kind of a funny moment. It was like that everybody suddenly became afraid of their pencil and didn't want to touch it anymore. During break time, I heard other people also say that the test was quite hard. But just out of curiosity, I checked online, and apparently 41.6% of the people who took the test passed. So only 41.6%. In July 2022, so the test before that one, 47% passed. Before that one, 45% passed. And before that one, 48% passed. So the test must have been more difficult the time when I took it. And the numbers also kind of prove that the test was just plainly more difficult. Which is kind of a big relief, because I was really starting to think that my Japanese knowledge suddenly went down in the span of a night. Luckily, the way that the test gets scored is not by answer the question wrong and it's -1, answer one correct, it's +1. They have this very strange system of like rating it, and they kind of look at other people, their answers, to decide which questions should have more points or less points or should not count. I'm not 100% certain how it goes. I think it's probably to avoid people just plainly guessing the correct answers. Basically, they have their own system. Don't really try to think whilst doing the test, like, oh, I got that one correct, so that's 1 point. I got that one probably correct, so that's 1 point. Just don't do that. Do your test, don't really care too much about the things that you filled in already. And try to finish everything on time, because time is really the most difficult part to manage during the JLPT test. Time goes very quickly, and you probably won't have enough time to fill out all the answers or even time to guess all the answers. But part of me also starts to think that maybe they do that kind of a strategy of their own rating system, so they can decide how many people actually pass, so more people need to retake the tests, which means more money for them, and because they keep increasing the cost of the tests. That's probably just all in my head. Maybe, I don't know, I stopped trusting companies. And so for future tests, I am still planning on taking the JLPT N1, as that is still one of my biggest goals whilst learning Japanese. It's kind of my end goal, but that does not mean I will stop studying Japanese after that. I don't really need the JLPT for anything, I just want to achieve it to feel like I achieved something by having studied Japanese for so many years. But I also may look for more different Japanese language tests, because I'm starting to not really like the way that the JLPT community company is handling everything, so yeah. I may look to other alternatives and do those tests instead, because they keep cranking up the price and I don't want to start spending ichiman yen just to take a test. So yeah, that's how I passed the JLPT, by having studied for a couple of years and then very focused studying 1 month before the test happens. I will not recommend that. Maybe start 2 months in advance. So yeah, what are your goals for studying Japanese? Are you also aiming to achieve one of the JLPT levels, or do you just want to be able to have conversation in Japanese or be fluent? Whatever fluent may mean for you. Because the word fluent is kind of, yeah. Let me know in the comments below and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you for watching and enjoy studying Japanese. Bye bye.